Welcome to our presentation. Today we're going to help you sail your way into a good night's sleep. The first area we're going to talk about is sleep health. Sleep health. Health is always talked about with nutrition and exercise, but what about sleep? The CDC has defined that insufficient sleep has become a public health problem and epidemic because 1 in 3 Americans get less than 7 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. In 2014, a study was done in the U.S. covering all the states, and they came up with these fact sheets that are on the cdc.gov/sleep website that you can pick each state individually and see what their statistics show. The 3 states I picked are the ones that are represented in our presentation of the 3 people where each of us are from: Arizona, Texas, and Utah. It shows the demographics comparative to the areas, but basically it shows that the prevalence of short sleep, less than 7 hours a day, is still that 1 in 3 across America. A little bit different in percentages, but not a whole lot. Also in those fact sheets from each state, it gives you information on how to be a healthy lifestyle and what it implies with a sufficient sleep. It gives more demographics based on sex, age, race, health risk factors, and chronic conditions that are all show what percentage of people have less than 7 hours of sleep that have these problems. So, what does that mean? Health issues are linked to less sleep. Errors are linked to less sleep. Motor vehicle accidents are linked to less sleep. Industrial accidents throughout history have been linked to insufficient sleep. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Exxon Valdez, the Space Shuttle Challenger are all been error based on insufficient sleep. Occupational errors, we know that less sleep is very common in making occupational errors, and we've seen it and we've been parts of it, and we probably feel guilty about some of the things that we've done when we haven't had sufficient sleep. So today we're going to talk about, in my section, circadian rhythms, our body clock. What is your body doing while sleeping? How do you know if you're sleep deprived? And then we're going to do something that's going to make you think. What do you do that makes you get less sleep? How can you change that habit, and how can you replace it with another habit? First, circadian rhythm. What is circadian rhythm? Our body is based on cycles. A sleep-wake cycle, our hormones based on cycle, our temperature of our bodies on cycle. At 4 to 6 a.m. it's the coldest. 7 to 8 a.m. we seem to warm up. All those combinations give us our alertness throughout the day when they work together. Our body's immunity works on cycles. Metabolism, renal and kidney failure, those are all based on the cycles of the circadian rhythm. But definitely, what is their circadian rhythm? Psychology today defines it as a body clock. It tells our body when to sleep, when to rise, when to eat, when it regulates physiological processes. It's our internal clock, but it's affected by environmental clues such as sunlight and temperature. So, as humans, and diurnal animals, where our alertness is daytime. But when they compared it to nocturnal animals like mice, the alertness is nighttime. They discovered something. Even with the absence of the light-dark cycle, our bodies still set up a rest and activity rhythm that is kept to a 24-hour cycle. So our body has a pacemaker. It's in our brain. It's a brain pacemaker, and it says more than 35 years ago it was discovered that the circadian rhythms in mammals are driven by pacemakers in the brain. I don't want to get too technical, but I'm going to go into this section a little bit about the brain so you kind of understand what's going on. You have a pacemaker in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It is similar to right here in the brain, small area. It's by the hypothalamus and in the part of the hypothalamus. Another gland that's a hormone gland, the pineal gland, is right here. That's the bright light right there. It's the endocrine gland. It produces hormones. Now, another thing we're going to talk about is called, never can say this right, melanopsin. It's a protein in your eyes that receives light and darknesses and triggers that pineal gland to produce melatonin. We've all heard of melatonin. And melatonin is activated when the melanopsin starts seeing dark. It tells the pineal gland, okay, it's time to make the melatonin. And as the melatonin increases with darkness, our bodies want to go to sleep. Okay, so next part is, what is your body doing while you're sleeping? Well, of course, everybody knows we do dreaming in REM sleep. But the other stages of the non-REM sleep, there are 4 stages of that. The first 2 are the lighter stages. The next 2 are the stages 3 and 4, for a total of 90 minutes. And if you look over the schedule, that kind of gives you an idea of how we are supposed to sleep if we sleep the 8 hours, 5 cycles in a night of 90 minutes. We're going to go through each cycle and slowly go to sleep, and then slowly wake back up and slowly go to sleep. Well, if you look at that stage 4, the beginning of the night, it's the largest. Why is that? Why is those stage 3 and stage 4 the largest? One thing that they always say is because for years back in the day when we slept out on the ground, we had to be careful that we had to keep a watch out for the saber-toothed tiger. Stage 4 and stage 3 are only 3 to 4 minutes. They're not very long stages. The first part of the night, they are the longest. Why is that? We've discovered that stage 4 is a reparative part of sleep. It's where we reset, where we download our memories, where we are like a computer and just reboot for the night. We repair. You've always watched the computers, the science shows that have cyborgs or whatever you want to call it. They shut down because they reboot, they resystem. Ours repairs muscle, repairs stress, releases stress. We release hormones. At the University of Rochester, a study was done by Macon Niedergard, and this is what he said. Restorative nature of sleep appears to be the result of the active clearance of the byproducts of the neural activity that accumulates during wakefulness. Where do our byproducts in our brain go? Where do all those hormones go? When do they go away? They don't get time to break during the day. It's during sleep. So let me show you. This study was done with hormone levels. In group 1, they were allowed to sleep 4 hours. Group 2 was allowed to sleep 8 hours. When they compared their levels of these 2 hormones, leptin, the one that has you feel full after you've eaten, it decreased by 18%. People that had ghrelin hormone, the hormone that makes you feel hungry, increased by 27%. So if you sleep less, you feel less full and you feel more hungry. So evidence suggests that various hormones and metabolic processes are affected by sleep quality and circadian rhythms. Hormones such as growth hormone, melatonin, cortisol, which is one that keeps you awake, that leptin and ghrelin are closely associated with sleep and circadian rhythm. And endogenously circadian regulating mechanisms play an important role in glucose and lipids. So sugars and fats, homeostasis, how our body breaks those down. Sleep disturbances and particularly deprivation are associated with an increased risk of obesity, diabetes, insulin insensitivity, and dysregulation of leptin and ghrelin, which negatively impact human health. That's a mouthful. Basically, it messes with our system. So, what is your body doing? So, how do you know if you are sleep deprived? Can you wake up without an alarm? Do you feel refreshed throughout the day? Do you use caffeine to spark your energy? What is your mood like? What is your sleep factor throughout the day? Do you fall asleep when you're sitting down for a few minutes? Do you dream right away? All these questions, a lot of them. But if you answer, it's not no and it's not yes, but if you answer those questions and realize, oh my gosh, those are telling me that I'm sleep deprived. Your body, for every 2 hours awake, needs 1 hour of sleep. So, 16 hours awake, 18 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep. That would be nice, 18 hours. 2 hours per 1 hour. Okay. So, are you sleep deprived? What can you do to change the habit? So, we're talking about a decisional balance. So, I'm going to talk about, let's say, my problem of not getting to sleep at night is trying to burn both candles at both ends. I stay too long on the computer, or I try to do laundry, or try to do things too busy at the light. So let's say I decide just to leave that and list the pros and cons of leaving that as is and not changing it. So maybe I get more things done, but I'm tireder during the day. Maybe I'm not as patient with my children. There's a lot of reasons, and you can make up a ton of reasons. But the next part is change the behavior. What if I started going to bed earlier? List the pros and cons of that. So if I did that, I might feel healthier. I might feel better. I might be more pleasant to work with. I might not make errors at work. Okay. Now, go back over and look at your list. Does each have merit? Yeah, I can rationalize and say, but how can you tell? But I can rationalize and say, yeah, each of them does have merit. I can do that. But there's a way to tell directly if it's affecting your system. Look at the short-term gains versus the long-term gains. If the short-term gains don't weigh out, my health is going to be affected if I stay up all those late hours all the time. I'm not going to get the sleep I need. I'm not going to do the things I want to do. But long-term, what if I did change that habit? What would happen? The long-term gains is better health, a better routine, better mood, better productivity. That's how you tell what the long-term gains are. So, how do we replace that habit? Well, we can be very destructive with our decision making. We can say, I want to do better. I should really stop doing that habit. You can feel guilty and keep going and going and feeling guilty over what you're doing. So you need to come up with something new to do instead. Maybe I'm going to take time and stop and do write in my journal and start a new habit, start accomplishing something different. So when I finally do accomplish doing that on a regular basis, it puts that bad habit away and I get proud of that accomplishment. So that's the end of mine. Now we'll start into the next group.
Hi, welcome to section 2 of this presentation on sleep deprivation. My name is David Frost, and I will be narrating this portion of the PowerPoint as we analyze the side effects of cumulative sleep loss. So each of us is confronted by stressors in our life. We've all had sleep deprivation. The stressors that cause the sleep deprivation, they could be being a student, a parent, a partner, a spouse, or a working professional. And when we have the sleep deprivation, we get all sorts of symptoms that pop up. So how do we deal with it? A lot of people, when you're sleep deprived, you come across a problem. You might have a friend look at you and say, "Hey, man, don't lose sleep over this." Well, that is some very sound advice, because allowing our body to have enough sleep to repair itself and heal should be our goal. Americans, right? We are a very highly motivated people. As a whole, we are a very productive society. When we happen to get in a sleep-deprived state, we don't sleep. We do the American hustle. We do as much as we can on as little sleep as we can, and we try to treat ourselves with caffeine. We either have a Dr. Pepper, a Coke, go to Starbucks, the pharmacy of Starbucks, and we get all sorts of coffee products. If we're really, really tired, boy, we'll break out the Monster, or we'll order the double shot of espresso. Well, what's caffeine really doing? Is it really helping the problem? Well, I'm going to say a resounding no. Research is showing, yes, caffeine certainly keeps us awake and alert, but it is only masking the problem. Well, what problem is it masking? Well, look, when we are sleep deprived, caffeine, yes, it's making us awake, but it's masking the problem. As it masks the problem, it blinds our awareness of this dangerous state of unaccumulated sleep loss. Well, what happens when we're in this state? We have an unawareness that we have inattentive forgetfulness and performance lapses. These performance lapses and forgetfulness, when we're in a caffeinated state, we're so sleepy we don't even know really that we're making errors, essentially, is what it's saying. We're having a mental lapse, and that creates our performance errors. So when we're in this state, and we're kind of hazardous. We're hazardous to ourselves, and we're hazardous to those who work around us. So when does this normally hit? Well, researchers who look at sleep deprivation and the circadian rhythm realize that the circadian rhythm has two nadir points, between 12 and 6 in the morning, and between 1 and 5 in the afternoon. These are natural low points, even when we're not sleep deprived. What researchers have found when they try to compare sleep deprivation errors and their circadian rhythm is that it's not really changing their circadian rhythm, but it is enhancing it. The greatest amount of of errors that are attributed to sleep deprivation occur between 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. and again 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Very interesting. So let's put that into perspective and look at workplace errors and see if that bears out as true. Let's look at some of the work performance errors here. The statistics behind the statistics. All right, motor vehicle accidents. We all know that everybody's making the morning commute. Between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning, that is when the greatest amount of motor vehicle accidents occur in America. Well, that's not surprising. What does that have to do with sleep deprivation? Well, sleep deprivation researchers streamlined, or I should say they filtered out the data. They looked at accidents that were caused only by falling asleep at the wheel, and what they found was that motor vehicle accidents occurring from, quote, falling asleep at the wheel, the peak of all of these occurrences was between 1 and 4 a.m. and then a smaller bump between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Kind of interesting, right? Well, let's look at some other work performance. All right, so Swedish meter readers. We've got Swedish Gas Works, who has a bunch of meter readers that go around, and they work 24-hour shifts. Excuse me, not 24-hour shifts, but they work around the clock. They do a 20-year study on their meter readers to see what kind of errors they're making. They find that in a 20-year period, over 75,000 errors are made. Of those 75,000 errors, the peak of errors in meter readers was between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. during that nadir of time of the circadian rhythm cycle, but enhanced when they were sleep deprived. 3 Mile Island, 1979, southeast Pennsylvania, one of America's premier nuclear reactors. One of the valves, mechanical valves, fails to let coolant into the reactor. One of the workers, whose jobs is to monitor this, fails to see it, overlooks it, and they have a near nuclear meltdown. Of course, they make a movie about this later, but a very famous incident. This was attributed to a very fatigued and sleep-deprived worker who failed to make correct diagnostic evaluations between 4 and 6 a.m. in the morning. Space Shuttle Challenger, 1986, January, 73 seconds after takeoff, it explodes, killing all 7 astronauts on board. President Reagan, of course, asks for a commission to investigate what happened. They do so. They find that the O-rings malfunction. Well, what are the O-rings? O-rings were not supposed to function very well in cold weather. In the weeks and days leading up to this, because it was very cold in Florida that week, the manufacturer of the O-rings called the project managers and say, hey, it's very cold, don't launch this thing. We could have some untoward outcomes. In the hours leading up to this, the two project managers only get 2 hours of sleep in 48 hours. As a result, they overlooked this important piece of information, and they launched the shuttle anyway, and the disastrous results followed. Very costly errors due to sleep deprivation. Chernobyl, 1986, July. One of the workers there has a performance error. Because of that error, the reactor explodes, sending a cloud of radioactive dust and ash across the area for hundreds of miles, and ecological and environmental disaster for decades to come. This error later is known to be committed by a very fatigued, sleep-deprived worker at 1 o'clock in the morning. American Airlines Flight 1440, they're heading from Dallas-Fort Worth to Little Rock, Arkansas. They're at the end of their duty period, which the FAA regulates at 14 hours. They're fatigued. They shouldn't have taken the flight, but they decide they want to press it and get home. They encounter terrible weather, storms. They make some very bad decisions in this, and as a result, the plane crashes. 11 people die, and hundreds are hurt. Well, terrible outcomes from bad decisions made while you're fatigued and sleep deprived. Healthcare workers, we seek to help other people, And even in our best, most earnest desire to help others, are we immune to such problems? Absolutely not. In fact, healthcare workers have some of the greatest error statistics of any of the professions. Recent studies showing that, for instance, pediatric surgical residents, when they work 24 to 36-hour shifts, they are 32% more likely to have medical errors in their practice than their counterparts who only work 16 hours. Nurses who work the night shift and are sleep deprived are twice as likely to have needle sticks, have greater amounts of medication errors than do their day shift counterparts. As much as we like to think that we're immune to it, we have terrible problems in the healthcare industry because of sleep deprivation from night shift working nurses, and also from the residents who do these extraordinarily long marathon shifts. So we have much improvement to make there. Well, we've talked about the workplace errors. How about our human health? How does sleep deprivation affect our health? Let's talk about 3 areas here: immunity, obesity and diabetes type 2, and memory. Immunity first. So sleep researchers think, well, maybe our immune system is failing to perform by producing T cells, B cells during sleep deprivation. Maybe that's why we're getting sick when we're not sleeping. So they draw the serum values and voila, there is no effect on T cells, B cells. What there is, however, is during sleep deprived states, our body has an increased production of plasma cytokines. With an increased production of plasma cytokines, we have increased cellular inflammatory state. Well, it's this cellular inflammatory state that decreases the immune system's ability to recognize and release immune regulating hormones that improve our immune system response time. So if we're not sleeping well, and we do it for a number of days in a row, you're essentially handicapping your immune system's ability to fight and attack foreign invaders in the body. How about obesity and diabetes type 2? Well, plasma cytokines play an effect here too. With an increased amount of plasma cytokines, we have cellular inflammation, and when we have that, the insulin is these cells resist insulin. Insulin-resistant diabetes, that's type 2, right? Well, when we have that, our weight goes up, we become more obese, and in the presence of obesity and diabetes type 2, we now have the precursors for cardiovascular disease. Let's look at memory. Sleep deprivation is most immediately seemingly affects our memory. It affects it in 3 areas: temporal memory, our verbal fluency, and our response inhibition. So, temporal memory, it's that short-term memory up to long-term memory. You may be walking in the house and realize, where did I put my keys? Oh my gosh, where's my hat? Where's my wallet, my watch? Where did I put all these small items? And you may not be having a early onset of dementia or Alzheimer's. You may be simply heavily sleep deprived. So if you find acutely that this is all of a sudden occurring, you might want to examine your sleep schedule and think, am I getting enough sleep? Because when you're getting enough sleep, your memory should be working status quo. How about verbal fluency? Verbal fluency is measured by our ability to facilitate the information from our mind and then speak it. Well, an example, you might be finding yourself thinking of an object or a place or having a face, and you cannot pull that person's face to speak it. You can't speak the name of the object or the place. These are all areas of verbal fluency that are affected by sleep deprivation. So you'll find that affected as you're lacking sleep. Lastly, response inhibition. Response inhibition is the suppression of actions that are no longer required for any given situation, where we pull back and say, hey, I don't need to do that anymore. And also actions that are inappropriate. Well, they've measured sleep deprivation on response inhibition, and when you're sleep deprived, your ability to make good judgments with response inhibition are equivalent to a legally intoxicated person. In other words, your ability to make good decisions when sleep deprived are no better than someone who's drunk. Interesting. Well, additional research shows that sleep deprivation affects the molecular signaling in the hippocampus that's important for synaptic plasticity. Well, really, what does that mean? What it means is that synaptic plasticity is that neurobiological process that contributes to learning and memory. So when you're heavily sleep deprived, you may have difficulty with your memory and your ability to learn new concepts. So, in review, let's talk about a couple things. Caffeine. It is not a treatment for sleep deprivation. It is only going to mask the problem that you already have. Our performance errors in the workplace, they're going to be increased with sleep deprivation. Our health is diminished greatly. With immunity, our memory, and it subjects us to disease. And really, that's it. I want to thank you for listening in. And the next time you encounter a stressor in your life, my advice would be, don't lose sleep over it.
With that would be, if you don't fall asleep within 20 minutes, get up, get out of the bed, and do some sort of relaxing activity. Then until you begin to feel sleepy, and then go back to bed. Try it again and again. At 20 minutes, if it doesn't work, get up and try that same thing. Relaxing activities mean listening to soothing music, to reading, taking a bath, some scented candles, but absolutely under no circumstance should you look at any screens. Screens will trick your brain into thinking it's time to be awake. Just a bit of caution, if you take any sort of sleep aid, over-the-counter prescription sleep aid, it's useful for a short period of time in helping you go to sleep. And it definitely helps you go to sleep. But just know, medication is not a cure for insomnia. Sleep hygiene is really going to be your best bet for improving your quality of sleep long term. Most adults truly need 7 hours of sleep. I know we like to think that we only need 4 or 5, or taking a few naps in between is going to be beneficial for us, but it's not. The evidence is strong, and it suggests you need at least 7 hours of sleep, even as an adult. Whenever sleep time is over, get out of the bed. Don't linger in the bed, don't stay in the bed, don't dwell. Whenever you start doing more activities in your bed, reading, doing work, doing schoolwork, that your brain begins to think that the bed is a place to do those activities and not a place to do sleep. And so you can really sabotage your efforts to get better sleep. Watching what you eat and drink is extremely important. When it comes to taking in stimulants or anything else, so nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, sugar, and drugs, all bad for your sleep. Alcohol is one of those things like, well, alcohol helps me go to sleep. Well, it's true, it does help you go to sleep, but the research is clear that sleep that you get by ingesting alcohol prior to bed decreases your quality of sleep. And so it's not just getting to sleep that's important, but your quality of sleep is also important. Eating late in the day is not helpful. It makes it difficult for your body to relax and to stay asleep. So consuming meals close to bedtime, it also may contribute to going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So you don't want to be eating and drinking within 2 hours of bed. Large quantities or heavy meals make it also difficult for your body to relax, as it's trying to digest all of those foods, and can make it difficult to fall asleep, especially if you suffer with some sort of reflux, GERD, or upset stomach. Your environment is so key in setting the stage for enabling you to go to sleep. You need a cool, dark, quiet room, and above all things, avoid screens. I can't stress it enough. I can't talk about it enough. Within 1 hour of bed, you really do not want to be looking at TV screens, cell phones, computers, ebooks, tablets, etc. Anything that has a screen. The light that comes from these devices tricks your brain into thinking that it's daytime, and it wants to be awake, and you're going to have a difficulty going to sleep. Daytime naps. One of my favorite things, and probably favorite things of several adults, even though the bane of children's existence. Naps should be between 20 and 30 minutes, really no longer than that. And you really want to avoid taking naps late in the day. Whenever you're taking naps late in the day or taking multiple naps, you're setting yourself up for failure later on. Naps are important, and they're very, very helpful, especially if you're a night shift worker. Your sleep schedule is going to be a little bit different, and the sleep hygiene that you'll need to follow is going to have a little bit of a different outline than what I'm outlining here. But naps are important, and it's good to take them. Just don't take them too long, and don't take them too close to when it is that you're supposed to be in bed. Physical activity is good for the body and the mind. Tremendous benefits from physical activity. I haven't seen one research paper that talks about how physical activity is bad for you unless you have some sort of condition or situation where you shouldn't engage in physical activity, but I haven't come across it. Whenever you exercise, it should be regular exercise. You should do it 4 to 5 times a week for at least 20 minutes whenever you do it. You really want to get that heart rate up. Physical activity helps you to expel the energy that you've been consuming during the day and had built up during the day, and so that way your body can relax and rest, and it makes it easier for you to fall asleep. So physical activity is essential to just about any form of healthy lifestyle, tip, or living, and especially when it comes to sleep hygiene. Managing your worries. Now, managing your worries is definitely a skill, and it requires practice. And if you need extra help, there are several resources that you can go to learn how to manage your worries. But we're going to cover just some basics on some things to help you manage your worries. Resolving any sort of concerns that you can before bed will help your mind to relax. Because whenever your mind is engaged on the concerns of the upcoming day, it's difficult for you to just relax and to go to sleep. I'm sure several of you have experienced this. So some things that you can do to help out with that are, one, if it's a concern that you have with a child or your husband or wife or whomever that you can talk to, try and talk it out with them. Try and resolve that concern if possible. If not, if that's not possible, it's just not a doable thing for whatever the concern or the worry may be, write down your concern, or whatever it is that's on your mind, whether it be a to-do list or goals for tomorrow. When you write it down, your body knows, it's like, okay, I'm not going to forget this, so I don't have to think about it all night. And so that way, whenever you wake up in the morning, you have your list there. Your brain knows, well, I'm not going to forget this thing, and it can actually help you get to sleep quicker and easier. Learning meditation or other forms of relaxation are very helpful when it comes to managing your worries. Getting organized also helps. Now, this can kind of go into the category of setting a schedule, but being organized in your day, setting priorities, delegating tasks, writing down goals. As you get your life in order and as you manage all of the activities, concerns, the fears, the obligations that you have in life, then it becomes a lot easier for your brain to relax at night and to sleep, because your brain knows, hey, I've got this under control, I've got things down, we're going to be able to move forward with this. So getting organized is very, very useful whenever it comes to managing your worries and managing your stress. I'm grateful for your time. Thanks for listening to what I had to say about sleep hygiene. Here are some great references. This is where I pulled the information from to bring this to you. And please feel free to visit all of these websites. They are great resources, especially if you need some additional references and information about how to improve your sleep quality. So hopefully you all have a great day, and you also have a great
Sleep. Hopefully that got added in. It got cut off when I got the video, when JB sent me the video. My name is Sharon. I didn't get to introduce myself at the beginning. These are my references from the first section on sleep health. And David will be after me, and he will put his references in. Thanks for watching, and please remember, please don't forget to leave a comment like the instructions said. Thanks for your help.